Thank you, Richard. I really appreciated you speaking about the Internet Kink Health Study. Our next speaker today is Marla Renee Stewart. Marla is going to be speaking about an intersectional approach to sex therapy, centering the lives of Indigenous, racialized, and people of color. Marla, please share.
So I'm really happy and proud about this book. It's called, if you don't have it already, An Intersectional Approach to Sex Therapy, Centering the Lives of Black, Indigenous, Racialized, and People of Color. And I tell you I'm really proud of this book because when Reese brought us on, so he asked Marietta, James, and I to co-edit the book and reach out to people to see if they would be interested. And we really wanted to get authors, writers, educators, sex therapists who were doing the work and really being able to make a difference in people's lives. So first I just want to go through the chapters and just have you listen to the titles of the chapters. And then I'm going to go and then I'm going to talk about sort of more. So anyway, the titles, so the first chapter is called Intersectional Awareness and Training and Supervision. And then the second chapter is Black Like Me, Reflections from Black Male Sex Therapist and Supervisor. And so those first two chapters, the first one being by Jomo Phillips and Ruth Nustifter, and the second one being by James Wadley. I'm super, they were really, really great because they really talk about sort of how supervision is in the sex therapy world. And when thinking about, people of color and how, we've been treated in the past, especially within, certain bureaucracies such as academia and other social institutions, it's kind of sometimes like there can be some challenges. And so I was really excited about those two chapters. And then the third chapter is Working with Indigenous Peoples in Canada, the Legacies of Colonization on Sexuality. Oh, there was another thing too I wanted to say really quickly is that when Reese brought us on, I thought it was interesting because, the three of us are from the US and Reese is in Canada. And so to have this sort of breakdown of international barriers, knowing that there's some similarities and some differences, I thought was amazing. And I just, thinking about it sort of, I guess, in an expansive way. So anyway, the fourth chapter is Real Men Don't Cry, the effects of racism and oppression on masculinity, emotionality, and intimacy in Black men. And fifth chapter is Honor and Virginity, the role of honor and virginity in the sexual acculturation of women from the Middle East to the United States. Sixth chapter, Who Am I? An Intersectional Approach on Working with Gay and Lesbian Chinese Youths in Canada. Seventh chapter, Redefining Sexualities of Migrant, Latinx, and Middle Eastern Women in the United States. Eighth chapter, Transgender Bliss from Gender Dysphoria to Gender Euphoria through Decolonizing Gender. Lex, who's going to be talking about hers next, is depathologizing the Black superwoman's kinky sexual fantasy. 10th chapter, More Than Ebony and Ivory, Complexities of Sex Therapy with Interracial Relationships. Cooking Therapeutic Recipes with Two East Indian Couples, Some Convention, A Dash of Rebellion, and Stir. Sexual Sovereignty and Erotic Survivance, Two-Spirit, Sexual Health and Vitality. Holy Sex Using Narrative Therapy and Mindfulness to Address Church Hurt and Embrace the Erotic. My chapter, Queering Straight Black Relationships, Navigating Sexual Behavior and Relationships with Black heterosexual individuals and couples in the Southern United States. Black polyamory, exploring the complexities of race and sexual freedom, and women of Asian diaspora and BDSM, understanding layers of identity impacting kink exploration, and one practical strategy. So as you can see, with all of those different chapters, there's just a really broad, just an array of different, not only experiences, but there's also a different array of tactics that we use to help, whoever we were helping. And the title, An Intersectional Approach to Sex Therapy, I thought was, I don't want to necessarily say like misleading, but it's kind of, it seems like it's narrowly focused, but we are actually, it's actually broader in the sense of, we are able to expand that to coaches, educators, folks who are helping people out on an everyday basis. And so the way that we arranged the chapters, which we thought would flow, we thought about having the key terms at the beginning, after the introduction. And we felt that we didn't want to do that. We took some time going back and forth because we're like, a lot of people are going to mention intersectionality, right? It's called an intersectional approach to sex therapy. We knew that intersectionality theory was going to be a big one when it came to the chapters. And then we decided to have everybody kind of have their own take on whatever they wanted to, however they wanted to talk about their intersectionality. So it's, yes, and if you could get your book at, a local, Black or feminist bookstore, that'd be great too. In addition, I have sorry y'all, I'm slightly on baby duty. He was napping. So our suggestions for bookstores. I always say, like, go to your local feminist Black or bookstore. Like here in Atlanta, we have, Karis, which is our feminist bookstore. So so anyway, so we arranged each chapter by, stating your introduction, how you wanted it, sort of your literature review. And then we said, go into sort of like your case studies, what that looks like, what were their goals, all of those different things. And then we really wanted to talk about sort of the strategies that you use, to help people if there were certain strategies. So we really wanted to organize. We didn't want to like put too, like organize it for everybody too much, but we really wanted people to have the opportunity to say, here's what happened, here's the tools, here's some references, here's some additional critical questions, and here's some extra readings that you can do. So yeah, like I said, I'm super proud of the book. Everybody should have this book in their hands if they're, if they're like, hey, I'm having this experience. I'm sure there's something in the chapter that's going to lead to that. So I guess I will stop there. Does anybody have any questions?
While people are pondering, I just wanted to say thank you. I am very much looking forward to reading the book. I ordered it in mid-January, and it's my understanding it is print on demand. It has printed, and it's supposed to be shipping, so I'm looking forward to it. And
yes, we just got ours, so.
So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it and potentially making it into required reading for the sexual attitude reassessments that I teach. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Do you have any questions from anyone? You can turn on your microphone. You can type in the chat. Oh, there's a question in the chat. What was the most surprising thing for you in collecting and reading the chapters?
You know, I would say the most surprising thing for me is that everybody had a different tactic on how they handled situations, which I guess makes sense for all the different kinds of things. But sometimes you would think like maybe a certain race or maybe there is a certain particular dynamic that, you would see multiple way, you would see maybe a tactic that's used for a set population of people, but everything was so different. That's what I really loved about this, was just like, yes, baby play date. That's what I was really excited about, like knowing that there's just so many different ways to help folks of color. And so, yeah, it's a brilliant. And I really am proud of, like, there's sex therapists that can learn from coaches and coaches that can learn from sex therapists, all in this book. And it really makes sense.
So there's another question. Is there going to be a sex ed version of this book?
A sex and version?
A sex education?
A sex ed version. So I would say that's what I was saying about, like, the title's a little misleading, because I would say this is sort of a sex ed, like this is kind of a sex ed version. It's like sex ed, counseling, therapy, coaching, kind of all in one. So yeah, when you take a look at it, you'll kind of see like what I'm talking about, because there are so many different kinds of sexologists and sexologists who are doing stuff with sex therapy, coaches, all the different, all the different kinds of ways that, you want to learn and talk about sex and sexuality.
Thank you. There's one last question. Did you see any common themes across chapters that stand out as being important to communicate to therapists?
I would say the most common thing, I would say, like, really listening to folks of color, people of color, and like meeting them where they're at and using the strategies that maybe have helped them in the past. So if you are like a person who has not been familiar with working with people of color, then this is sort of the opportunity to, like, sit, listen, and say, like, hey, what are the things that that people can do to what are the things that you think you can do to help yourself? So for instance, I guess I could just kind of give an example. Like with my chapter, I talked about a couple who talked about they loved fan fiction. So, so using that strategy to help them get to what they need and how they want to talk about the power exchange that was happening in their, relationship. So I would say that's probably one of the most commons, besides maybe how certain identities experience racism, in their lives.
Thank you so much, Marla. If people are still pondering ideas and questions, we will have